Hi, how you doing? So in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use textures in your images just so you can make them pop a little bit. Now I took this picture about 10 years ago and I was messing around with it just because I was revisiting some of the old images that I've taken, and what I thought would be really cool is if I could add some texture to the canopy of this Victorian cart. So that's what I did, and I wanted to show you this because it's quite an easy process to do, and using textures in your images can give you some really interesting effects. So I'll walk you through this and show you how I done it. So this was the original and then this is the after. Like I said, it's quite easy, so I'll walk you through the process. So obviously you start with your image, and you can get textures pretty much anywhere. If you Google textures, there will be lots and lots of websites that come up. You can buy them. Some of them are free to download as well. So just search and you'll come across them. The other option you've got is to actually shoot textures yourself. So you can go up to a brick wall, for instance. You can use tiles, stone, wood, anything that looks interesting and has texture to it you can use. So I've just got these three random ones that I've just picked, and I'm going to use these. So what I'm going to do is come up to the top here, which is the move tool. I'm going to click in the middle, drag up to my picture, keeping hold of the mouse, and then into the middle, and then let go. And that gives us our texture. Now, because I only want to do the canopy, I don't want to add this to the whole of the image. I'm just going to bring the opacity down. We can see then. So to make life easier, I'm going to press Command T to transform it, which means I can then shrink it. And by doing this, I'm going to save myself a lot of time and a lot of work, because I'm just resizing it to the areas that I know it's going to cover. So let's say it's about there. I'm going to press Enter. So that's fine. That's the first one. So let's get rid of that one. Don't save. And then come to the texture 2. I'm going to do the same. So click in the middle. Don't let go. Drag up to the image. Still holding down. Pull it into the middle. Let go. And this is just saying, are you sure you want to do this? Because the colors are a little bit different. That's fine. Just say OK. So again, let's come up to the top right to the opacity. Just bring that down just so we can see what we're doing. Press Control or Command T to transform, and then just resize this, and we can pretty much lay it over the same area. So there we go, that's fine. So press Enter once again. Let's get rid of that, and let's come to the final one, and again click in the middle, drag up to the top, drag into the middle, let go, Command T. Let's just bring the opacity down, and let's just shrink this and just resize it again. It doesn't have to be perfect. As long as it's covering the area, that's fine. So let's press Enter, and then that just confirms everything. Okay, so now we've done that, what we can do is we can actually group these together. So what you want to do is click on the top one, which is already selected on here, hold down the Shift key, click on the last one there, that's selected them all, and then just press Command G, and that will group everything together. So now that's grouped everything together, you can see there when you open it up, it's all in there. So the reason why I've done that is because it's going to save us a lot of work. What I want to do is mask out the areas, because obviously we don't want this texture going over the model, we don't want it going over to the trees. So what I'm going to do is come down to the bottom here where this little sort of square with the circle in it, and that is add a layer mask. I'm going to click that and then come over to my brush on the left hand corner here. I'm going to make sure that the foreground is set to black, and now what I'm going to do is just paint on the picture. So you can see what that's doing. That's actually deleting or getting rid of them layers in that area. So the reason why I group them together is because otherwise you'd have to do it on each one. When this way we can just do it all in one go. So it's a lot quicker. So I'm going to press Command plus just to zoom in, and I'm going to start deleting. Now what you can also do at the top here is change the opacity and the flow, which I will be doing as we get closer to the edges. You can basically bring it down, and it just means you get a bit of a smoother transition. So I know that I don't want any of the model covered, so I'm going to paint that in and just completely get rid of these areas here that I know for definite that I don't want any of that texture to come through. So there we go. Right, so now we're starting to get to the edges, and we're going to start getting a little bit closer, a little bit trickier. So I'm just going to make the brush smaller, and you can do that by pressing the bracket keys on your keyboard, or you can come to the top and you can select size. So it's just easier to use the bracket keys. The left one makes it smaller, the right one makes it bigger. If you don't know what the bracket keys look like, they're next to the enter key on your keyboard. So there we go. So let's just start painting this in. Now you can obviously and should take your time when doing this. You can get a lot better selection than what I'm doing. So let's just get these edges here. I can be a little bit freer with it around the bottom here. There we go. So we've got these little intricate areas here. So what I would do is come in quite close, and then just start taking this away. And if you do make a mistake, just press Command or Control Z, and that will go back. So I just made a little bit of a mistake there, so I'm going to go back a couple of steps. There we go. And that just saves you having to start all over again. Okay, so that's looking good at the minute. So we've got some of these areas up here and along this canopy here. I think I want to keep that canopy as it is because I quite like that. I just want the inside of the canopy where the texture is there. So I'm just going to follow these edges, and like I said earlier, what you can do is you can increase and decrease this. I usually keep the opacity usually at 100% and then just change the flow. So when you bring this down, what that means is that you have to go over the area more than once in order for that selection to be made. So you can see there I purposely just went a little bit too close. Can you see? So let's just press Control Command Z just to go back a step, and now let's bring the opacity down, because what this is going to do is just give us a little bit more of a refined edge, so we can just blend it. Can you see there? So I'm actually purposely going over the whole of the edge there, but you get away with it because of the way that this blend with these settings, it works quite well. Now what can happen as well is when you're doing this is you think, oh, okay, yeah, I've absolutely covered everywhere. But what you might find is that you miss bits, but you wouldn't know that you've missed bits because it's impossible to see, isn't it? So there's a little trick you can do. If you come up to the layer mask here, hold the Option or Alt key and click, and it shows you the areas that you've gone over. So you can see here the black areas are areas that I'm purposely deleting away, and we missed a bit here. Can you see? So what I can do is just go over and just paint that in. There we go. So I can paint that in, and the reason why it's looking grey is because of the opacity and the flow that I selected. So I have to keep painting that until it goes black. So let's click that again, Alt and Option, and we can come back to it. So what you can do is use that as a guide, and it really does help get everything perfect, so you know you've done everything right. Okay, so I'm just going to speed this up a little bit now. So there we go. It's getting there. And here. Okay, so we're starting to get to some tricky points now, which is where our hair is. So again, I'm going to lower the flow, lower the opacity, and also when you're doing this, you've got the option to select a hard brush or soft brush. You want to have that at 0%, so it's nice and soft. What that means is that you're going to get a really good blend. So all I'm going to do is just go over the edges of the hair here. Now what you can do as well to make life easier is to get the opacity and bring this down. And what you can do is obviously if I bring that away, that's all going to completely go away. but I can control this so that I can really see where the hairline is. So by doing that, I can then just come in here and paint away and know that I'm getting as close to that edge as possible. And then we can use that trick that I showed you a minute ago where you look at the layer mask and see which areas you've painted in, which areas you've missed. So it's a real precise way of doing it, and you don't want to rush this. You really want to take your time. I'm doing this really quick because obviously I don't want you to sit there for the next 20 hours watching me painting hair. So let's click on that. There you go. So again, we can see the areas that we've missed. So let's speed that up, make the brush bigger, and we can go over the areas. So, because if we don't, then obviously all these areas will have that texture on, and I don't want that. So we can see all around here, little areas that I've missed. And there we go. So what I'm going to do is put the flow up a little bit more so it's a little bit harsher, and then just come in. And I know that they're the edges because I went right close to the edge as far as I want to go, so I can use that as a guide to paint the rest in. Okay. Right, so let's have a look at that. Okay, so I'm still missing bits there, and I missed a bit on her arm. You can see there. So you get the idea. You get the idea. All right. So once we've done this, what we can then also do is we can change the opacity of the whole of the filters. So let's have a look, see where we're at. Okay, so we've still got some work to do around here. So I'm just going to quickly go over that, and I think that is it. That is pretty much it there, isn't it? So let's just make sure. There we go. So I'm just going over an area now that's much bigger than what these textures were. Okay, right, so let's move the opacity up, and we can start to see there is our texture. So another trick is to actually press on the eyeball on the background. You can see where your texture is then as well. So if we look at that, we can say, all right, let's really observe these areas. Are we right against the edges that we want to be? Is it looking good? For instance, here I've actually missed this section here, so I'm gonna make the brush a little bit smaller, and then I'm just gonna come in and just start working this edge here. The other thing that you can do is hold the shift key down, and that will give you a dead straight edge. So if I click here and then come down to the area that I want to finish, hold the shift key down and click, that's going to give me a dead straight edge. The problem is that it's not a dead straight line, but sometimes you might have that, and that will save you a lot of time. So there we go, that's a point there. So I just need to just come in a little bit closer there. That's it. There we go. So that is looking pretty refined. The other thing that you can do if you want to add is come over to here and select the white. And then what that means is that we're going to add this back in. So we can add areas here. Okay, so we can add and really just fine tune this area here, because we want to make this look as realistic as possible. And again, the flow is quite high on this and the opacity, so let's bring that down, and then what we can do is just paint that in so it looks a little bit more natural. But I think we're going to get away with this line not being perfect, because I'm actually going to lower the opacity like I said a minute ago. So I'm not too worried, but if this had to be dead perfect, then this is what you would do. You would just paint that in, take your time, and really get that line straight and nice and clean looking. So again, around here, we just want to add that back in, just paint it back in there. Okay. Right, so once we've done this, we can see that the actual texture there is looking pretty good, but it is a little bit heavy. We can see there's the before and after. It is a little bit heavy, so let's come up to the opacity and let's just bring this down to around 60%. I usually find between 60 and 65 is a really good starting point. Sometimes you might need to bring it lower if you want it lower. For instance, that's quite subtle. I mean, that's without, and you can see the actual texture of the fabric there. I mean, this is a really, really expensive Victorian carriage. It's worth a lot of money, and the detail and the texture work that's in there is phenomenal. So we want to kind of show that, but also I just want to make it look a little bit older, just to sort of have in keeping. So we need to find a tipping point. So like I say, 65 is usually a good starting point, but on this particular image, that is actually now graying out that a little bit. So I want to bring that down until that yellow starts to pop through, so it's about there. So we're looking at about 40%, I would say, for this particular image. So you can see there's the before, there's the after, and you can see what I mean. We've still lost a little bit of that color and that vibrancy, but I think it looks pretty nice. Yeah, so we could also come down to each individual ones and change them. You can see that's at 35%, that's at 40, and that's at 45. So we could actually bring down the individual ones and just see what that's going to do, and how each texture, what it does. So this particular one here adds a lot of grey, so I'm going to bring that slightly down, and this one here, let's see what that does. That again adds a little bit of texture to it, so about there. So that looks pretty good to me. So let's just come to the history and click on the snapshot, so you can see there is the before and there is the after. So that's looking pretty good. Well, in fact, it's that one there. That's looking pretty good, and yeah, I quite like that. Now I have actually missed something around here. I can see that sort of popping in and out, but I'm not too fussed about that. It's just to give you the idea of how you can do these textures. And you can see there's one I've done earlier where I've actually, if we look at that one, I've actually put everything up quite high, so they're all at 100% on this particular one, and that's given us quite an interesting look. So yeah, you can kind of play around with these and do two different settings and just see what works best for you and your particular image. So I hope that's helped. I hope you've enjoyed that. Like I say, using textures can be really, really cool. It can add a little bit more three-dimensional look to your images and just help you out when you need it on things like this. So I look forward to seeing your images. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.